But I would like maybe to hear your thoughts about what they should be talking about, because when you talk about education, there's really a lot to talk about, right? I mean, more than just the review of the curriculum. Some people, for instance, suggest talking about parenthood as you know, an important part of preparing students or learners to perform well even in the basic education level. And also the EdCom 2 work will take, I think, a couple of years to complete, but certainly I think there's a general agreement that there should be some interventions made now. So maybe just your thoughts on what the scope should be, and maybe what your expectations.
One thing that we need to look at is the long-term impact, and we break it down. This is the theory of change, right? Long-term impact, and we break it down to more measurable outcomes. Whether we borrow concepts or programs from other markets or other countries, or we ideate on our own based on grassroots solutions and grassroots issues, we can definitely borrow both, or we can apply both. But I think at the end of the day, it's really understanding how change works, and at the end of the day, it's really how all of these, because we have so many initiatives that seem to be scattered, and I think that's also stems from what Mr. Yap mentioned earlier. When we start talking about technology, we go vague, and I think that's because we don't really understand whole of society discussions, right? We don't talk to all the stakeholders that we need to get insights from, and that doesn't then bring us to the impact that we want to have.
Now, the first thing I noticed about kids from at least the Philippines that I know, friends of my kids in the Canadian or Western schools, is that there's really a difference in values.
Okay.
The West is, of course, the Asian values. It's more family oriented.
Okay.
And then the influence of the family on the kids, which is why maybe emotionally the Westerners in general tend to be more fragile. No? I mean,
yeah.
we don't have too many Filipinos going up to the roofs and shooting random strangers passing by, right? So earlier when you mentioned about trying to introduce values formation as early as possible, I would certainly agree with that. It would reinforce the good things about the Asian culture, and I guess the earlier the better. I don't know what you'd call it, maybe not religion, because now they might say there's a bias, but I don't know whether it's moral values or ethics or whatever, but something as early as possible that tries to feed kids that there's a certain proper way to behave in society and with other people, and hopefully the parents at home can reinforce that, if somehow the system draws in the parents as well, right? And I would think that would go a long way towards affecting in the long run, the way the culture operates. Now, ultimately, this is supposed to be innovation. Now, the Western culture generally, I guess, would be the culture that's most successful in innovation. Most of the big innovations in the past century or so are either Europe or in terms of technology, we have Silicon Valley and so forth. So maybe there's something about the Western system that encourages innovation, whether it's encouraging people to be independent on their own.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, there are also certain strengths of the Asian culture, which are good for organizations, whether business or private. And these are the traits that that instill harmony in organizations, because you need harmony also to get organizations to perform. So there are different modes here. But in general, just on one aspect, I would encourage here the introduction of basic Asian family or whatever values, ethical values, as early as possible. Now, the other thing I noticed, which was very clear to me when I went to Canada and started interacting with some of the Caucasian parents there, in their schools there, as soon as they see an Asian student, they get intimidated. Oh, she or she must be good. he or she must be good in math. That's true, huh? They all assume
The
Asian
stereotype,
students
yeah.
are good in math, and in many cases it is, no? They are. So I was thinking, what is it about Asia that creates good people? Well, maybe it's the discipline the parents impose on them to study hard, etc., and so that they become proficient in certain fields. But in looking at it, right here in the Philippines, there's a number of examples of really excellent schools in that regard, which I'm referring to. I have a niece who studies at Philippine Science. They're very good, and you know, when she takes a vacation at her house in the province, she studies up to midnight. You know, talagang ano, on her own.
Yeah.
So, what are the factors that allows us to produce Philippine science institutions and students, and is there any way to try and
To scale it,
replicate that? No.
Yeah.
So those are just my basic thoughts on this whole field. I'm not an expert in education, but
Yeah.
I just thought it's all has to take into account certain values instilled in the kid as early as possible, and a discipline to study, such as what we find in the Philippine science high school system.
Yes, they go through a testing process the way we do it here too. There's this huge organization. They have children enrolled from the start, and there was an involvement of parents and children. The soccer coaches were the parents, they were volunteers. So there was a community-wide interaction that was run across the whole of the United States with the sole goal of developing soccer fans. The United States is not very well known in the soccer media. So they had this huge plan where they essentially said, we're going to enroll children, we're going to involve parents who know a bit about the game, and then we will start harnessing the talents and bring them up to a better level. In a sense, I guess education is like that. We all start off with grade school. Those of us who can, and in the United States, they've set their standards at high school. That's when they wean people away from those who will move on to college. So I'm seeing us do this in a way. We just have to decide what programs we really get into. You've decided, it would seem, to focus on technology, and I always remember one incident in AIM when I was teaching there, where Gabby Mendoza, then president of AIM, was hobnobbing with the Japanese and the Korean trustee, and he was laughing because the Japanese trustee at that time was trying to get more info from the Korean trustee, and he was saying, it looks like the Japanese are scared of the Koreans. They're going to come in and take control of the technology that is rising in Korea. And true enough, now Trinitron, Sony, is no longer as highly regarded, in my view, as LG or Samsung in TV sets. So there has been this major change. And I was thinking to myself, what is causing this? Well, there's a lot of focus on technology and engineering. The Koreans decided to do this. The Irish also did this. They decided that they were going to be good in the area of technology. The other thing that I found out was that in visiting Korea, they've decided a lot of the children have been inculcated with the concept of becoming K-pop stars. So I found out that it was not unusual for parents to give their kids with the facial surgery at the age of 15. And that's why you'll see that these guys are starting to all look alike. They essentially, just look at it. Essentially, there was a groundswell for something that they wanted to achieve. And this started at younger ages. The question, therefore, to me, has always been, what do we want to be? What do we want to achieve? And a lot of that will have to do, in my view, with taking into account our situation. When I was young, the focus was on land reform, rice, agriculture. Then I was thinking to myself, our country is an archipelago. We don't have the land resources that Australia would have, or the United States, or China. So why are we focusing so much on agriculture per se, other than the bare necessary minimum to get us to become self-sufficient, food security? But is this our be-all and end-all? The thought that I had, of course, was, if you look at land that we have and the way we develop our own resources, and you examine a place like Boracay, that's, I don't know, 20 hectares or something like that, generating $2 billion dollars in revenue. And then you look at all the emotion we put into talking about land being sacred for farming. I wonder if we have the right targets. Because from there, everything flows down. If we target that we're going to be the best farmers in the world, is it volume production that we're after? Or is it low volume, high value? And I think more than anything else, that is where we begin. Once you have an idea of what you want to do, then the mechanism of creating a program, testing and weaning away those who are not suitable, and gathering those who are, creating the educational institutions to focus on what we need to do, that will follow. And you can create the testing mechanisms that Tony was talking about to let this thing develop. So, just picking up your thoughts,
Interesting
I think that's where we should go.
The Philippines ranked first among the 45 countries in terms of spending most time in social media platform. So lagi tayong top. Given that we have one of the slowest Wi-Fi connection. Galing, di ba? So, sobrang galing. The reason why I'm sharing this with you is because I'm also a recovery coach and transformative coach. 2020, August, I was tasked to give a talk among the youth of Quezon City government. And the topic that was assigned to me to speak about was how to avoid suicide. And I told the organizers, can we tone down a bit with the topic because it's so strong. You have to speak about it. And after speaking around 45 minutes, I have 10 engagements after. And apparently, by God's grace, they were in the suicidal ideation stage already, and they were helped a bit. The reason why I'm sharing this with you is because I'm also a feast builder of Feast Manila. I was a feast builder, where thousands of young people are attending the live prayer meetings. Thousands. Priests would attend and they would say, Brother Obet, how are you able to gather thousands every Friday, 3 sessions of thousands of students? I don't know, probably a miracle from the Lord. Pandemic came in, we lost this number. What happened? And apparently in one conversation with a priest friend, Father Mario Bihe, he said that people nowadays are hyper-connected with billions of people, but internally disconnected. So which brings me to the issue of, I'm so inspired by Sister. We have now a guest in our philosophical education conference on November. We'll contact you. So I came across, in the study, I came across Power Distance Index. And apparently, we are a family-based culture in the Philippines, but the Power Distance Index is so high. We're 94, Indonesia 78, whereas the United States 40. Yung madaling kausapin ang mga superior, like father, mother. And which forced me or inspired me to write a book. Within the year I'll be writing it, Tony. And I will call it Let's Talk, because children nowadays are afraid of that invitation to Let's Talk. And apparently I will be co-authored by my wife, and my wife is now administrative director in Anawim, the Bo Sanchez home for the abandoned elderly. I have an 18-year-old son who's also studying in UP. Magka-schoolmate na kami ngayon, ma'am. By the way, Dr. Grace is beloved in our university. And my 13-year-old daughter. So I'm co-authored by my family. We'll be writing about Let's Talk. Because precisely Sir Tony Yap, we discuss about the culture of coaching, the culture of safety. All roads are leading to that. And as my philosophy of education, I'm into social reconstructivism. You speak a little and then let's converse, like what's happening now. All roads are leading to that. Iba-iba lang po ang title, Sister. Safe place, circle of truth, circle of communication. Lahat po yun. I believe that the high-tech technology, what is being said here, is for utility, and also yung sabi dito sa social dilemma, there's something about social media that is alarming. And in one of my findings, sabi dito, there are only 2 industries that call their customers users: illegal drugs and software. This is social dilemma of Netflix. So pinagbangga ko po yung prinsipyo ng 1916 material ni John Dewey at yung 2020 material ng Netflix ni McDavid. And this they're finding there's a call to an inward journey while making social media platform for utility only, because they will keep on. Kasi the reason why we are users is because we are being used. When there is no product, we are the product. The ads company will just come in pagka maraming mga viewers and so on. So there's a call for conversation, there's a call for conference, and I think yun yung advocacy na sinasabi ni Dr. Grace kanina, bringing us to honesty, truth, fairness, and courage. Pag-uusap ng mga tao. There's beauty in live discussions, there's oxytocin that is being pumped, and there's so much connection.
If the jobs, have been diminished, technology is reducing the role of the teachers. I mean, I used to ask my daughter for things that were current, and you know what she would tell me? Dad, you Google it. So the new teacher is really good. I do research. I was telling of it earlier. It's easier to write papers now using documents to back up what you say, and you just search. So really, the world is now the new classroom, and AI is the new teacher of the future. And Noble Harari, one of 21 lessons in the 21st century. Will AI control us? and convert us as Homo Deus, like gods, but because of our technology, or as we are trying to do, make AI as our servant and we not as slaves. I really think we have the future is, when you think about it, is a crazy scenario where the roles are changing, and I don't know how prepared we are for that.
Well,
And maybe I can recall EDCOM 1.
Okay.
Okay, and the context of EDCOM 1, because that comment of June is interesting about this disappearing thing. What was in EDCOM 1? Maybe some of us remember it, I do. And during EDCOM 1, there were a few very interesting things they did. First thing they did was they split the Department of Education
The three groups. Yeah.
into three. Instead of a Bureau of Technical Ed, which used to be the NMYC,
Yeah.
you're back to NMYC, but it's called TESDA.
Yeah.
Instead of Bureau of Higher Ed and Bureau of Basic Ed, you now have
Ched.
DepEd from the old DEX, and you have CHED.
Yeah.
What is the significance of that change? CHED says you cannot go online or hybrid unless you're at a certain level of accreditation.
Yeah.
But accreditation is not done by CHED. It is done voluntarily through private groups.
Yeah.
Therefore, CHED has abdicated its responsibility in taking care of the quality of education of the country. That's an EDCOM 1 result. And the only country that followed us was Thailand. They had all our problems. So what did they do a few years ago? They merged it back. And when they merged back their higher ed and basic ed, their quality started to improve. That is illustrative for EDCOM 2. And second, although they have also voluntary accreditation, their higher education is not crazy about it. It is the government recognition and quality control program that is important. Now, is that critical? Yes. Because unless you have that, then the really imaginative guys, the young guys with new learning institutions, new training centers, new schools, will continue not to be able to offer their courses. Whereas a Thailand and an Indonesia, they can do it because they do not wait for you to be accredited. So that is something for us to think about when we look at the role of media and tech in education. What is another result of EDCOM 1? EDCOM 1 was created at a time when technology did not have any problems of connectivity, any problems of bandwidth, any question about social media. They had no Google. They had no Facebook. And certainly no ChatGPT, no AI, no idea about this issue of self-learning, which everybody used to say was important, that the way to learn was experiential, was through exposure. That's why the big thing during EDCOM 1 was OJT, on-the-job training. They did not worry about the combination of private-public partnership, because what did the businesses want? They wanted the cheapest workers with the highest credentials. That's why the government started allowing people who did not own their facilities, who did not own their equipment, to put up schools. That is why you had a school as big as this room calling itself a college. That is after EDCOM 1, that's when you had the franchises. EDCOM 1 is when you started branching, multiple locations. Before, you have one Ateneo. You have one this, you have one. Suddenly, you have multiple locations. But the biggest impact of EDCOM 1 was the Congress saying, let us give free education. So the issue there for EDCOM 2 is structural. What is the role of the private sector? Is it still what it says in the law creating CHED and what is in the Constitution? that we are one country, and therefore the left and right pocket are in the same shirt, and therefore the private and public sector are equal. But they're not equal. And that is an issue for EDCOM too. With media and tech, theoretically, that should not be an issue, but it is. So let us think about EDCOM 1 and what that resulted in. The last result of EDCOM 1 was the move away from ROTC. And in the old days, ROTC was where you taught civic duty. Also, under EDCOM 1, you had all of these government scholars being required to do rural service. Look at those in medical. And it was going to be a move where all scholars of the government had to render rural service. Not only did that not materialize, but they removed the requirement for rural service. Suddenly, your curriculum, your programs are legislated. The determinant of our educational system is Congress. It's no longer CHED, DepEd, etc. And therefore, it's natural that you will remove the academic independence of the schools. Now, media and tech is supposed to be the great balancing act. At least that's what I hear from a lot of educators. So what is the solution? What will happen is that everybody will offer vocational programs, because vocational programs cannot be controlled by CHED. But that is a mestizo solution. So for us, that's why we have this topic. Does media and tech really represent the ability to bridge between EDCOM 1 and 2 and EDCOM 3, 4, and 5? Or has the fundamental landscape changed? And should we, who are leaders, start thinking maybe media and tech is really a solution waiting to be taken advantage of?
We have to focus on the intervention. We have already identified the gaps and the concerns, and then we have to come up with real-life solutions, particularly target the learning poverty and what we call reskilling emergency. And then for basic education, we need to strengthen the partnership between the school and the family, and also anchor on values formation and character formation. And for higher education, we will try to close the gaps between the academic and the industry skills demanded by the workforce in the 21st century. Sustainability is also important because the quality of education should also be sustainable. There must be a balance, and then we have to teach the students to think critically and then to be able to harness the power of the advanced fourth industrial revolution technologies to come up with solutions to real life problems that will be human-centric solutions. So pedagogy, as they say, is the driver, and technology is the accelerator. And ultimately, we should focus on what is most beneficial for people. Also, our planet Earth, of course, and then promote peace education. Eventually, we will have prosperity in our country and the global community. Values are important, and that we should be human-centric. So there will always be new developments in the world. Educational technology has been part of the educational system from time immemorial. But what we are doing now is the fast advancement of these technological tools. And we have to be sure that we are prepared to deal with this. We have the moral fiber, we have the ethical guidelines, so that no matter what advancements can come up, and if there is to be challenges in the ethical use of these advancements, then we are sustained because of the moral values that we hold. So there is really a need to look at the interaction and the support of family and school. Some would say that it takes a family, or that we build a nation one family at a time. And I think in the educational discussions, we have to emphasize the importance of parenting and the family as partners of the schools. In my time, the Parent Teachers Associations were a very important aspect of education. I think I would like to see more of that, so that teachers, parents, and the community work together in supporting the education of the child. Also, for education, it's important that we see citizenship as an integral aspect of education, so that as we look at the different subject areas and look at advancing reading, math, science, and technology, that this will be put to good use for society and the world at large.
Una, yung tracing the reality ng AI, na eskwelahan mababago ang pananaw at ang mga tao sa eskwela, kailangan siguro mag-adapt sila sa ano, dahil alam naman nyo, ang mga doktor, sanya, ang mga lawyers, sanya, ang mga teachers, possibly, mababawasan niya. Kailangan matuto mag-adapt. Dapat mag-adapt. Private sector, public sector. So, nasisiyahan ako dahil dito na pag-uusapan ito yung ano ba gagawin sa yung legislation, yung policy, para mag-intervene sa schools kung ano ba naman para maghandaan niya, especially kung sa innovation, sa technology, makakatulong tayo sa sa gobyerno kung ano ang mga technology na kailangan, especially sa mga broadband centers sa mga natin. So, yun ang maganda rito. At nakita ko sa mga kasali sa diskusyon, representative ng areas of education, na napakaganda.
Theory alone is not going to be able to teach that person. That person will not learn. Maybe you will teach that person the theory, but they will not understand it unless they live it. So you have to live it. So you have the OJT, but the OJT is kind of short. Maybe it's like 2 to 3 months. It depends, right? One thing, but I'm not sure, that's why I didn't talk about it, because I wasn't sure of the details. Remember we had this no contractuals, no endo? No contractualization, yes. So, the reason why I didn't discuss it was because I wasn't too sure of the details, and the reason I was speaking about it was a lot of students are working students. Yeah. And a lot of employees that we get in our company, some of them were working students. They worked at Jollibee, they were cleanup crew in Jollibee, they were part of the crew in McDonald's, and these were one of the best employees that we had because they were able to apply some of the theory that they learned in school, and like, for example, management or any other things. And so when I thought, oh no, when they did that endo or no contractions, I was like, paano na? What will happen to these young working students? They will not get, one is, they'll have a hard they have financial hardship. They're working students. That's why they're working students. Second is the experience that they get from being a working student is really, really good. Yeah. And it really contributes to their formation as a professional because then they have the work habits, they know what it is to work for someone. So when they finally graduate and go into the real world, they're confident as well. So you also gain your confidence from being a working student. So that was one of the things I was thinking about that I didn't say. was working students being able to, probably not being able to work anymore because of the no contractuals or the end.